Hey guys, what's up? I want to bring up something controversial and a topic that is widely discussed, and it just, in my field as a sex addiction therapist, there's a debate going on whether sex addiction is real or not. Is it a real thing? We're all sexual beings, and so how can somebody be addicted to sex? And there's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of my colleagues that say sex addiction is not a real thing. If you treat sex addiction, then you're just causing people shame because people are sexual and people look at porn, they do sexual things, and that's how it is. And so stop treating it as if it's an addiction. And there's an argument, and there's a lot of articles out there, there's a lot of blog posts, and I want to address this. I want to address this on our Facebook page. I want to address it here because I want to just make the argument that sex addiction is real. And I'd love to have a discussion about it. I'd love for you to comment below if you disagree with me, if you have other thoughts or ideas about this. But I think it's an important conversation to have, because if we can't identify it for what it is, then how are we going to treat it? How are we going to move forward, right? And so I do want to say this. Being sexual is normal, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a disorder. It's not a problem, obviously, right? And so there's hopefully no shame about being a sexual person and having desires and urges and all of those things sexually. However, sex addiction is a real thing, and it really depends on your definition of addiction. How I define addiction is using something over time, and its rate and duration increases along with its frequency, and you're using it to numb pain and to overcome emotions. And you experience withdrawal symptoms, you experience tolerance, meaning you need more and more of it in order to get the same hit. And as you do those things, your life becomes progressively unmanageable. So the diagnostic criteria manual, or the manual that we therapists use to diagnose people with mental health disorders, does not have sexual addiction in it. And one of the arguments saying that sexual addiction isn't real is that why isn't it in the diagnostic criteria manual? And I won't get into my theories as to why it's not, but it's not in here. But I want to actually use the DSM to make the case that sexual addiction is a real thing. So if you turn to the section on substance-related disorders and substance dependence, it goes to the criteria of what constitutes somebody having a dependence on a substance. Now, sex is more a process addiction. It's not you have to go get something like a drug in order to be addicted to it. But the criteria, if you were to replace sex with substance abuse in the DSM's definition of substance dependence, I don't see why it doesn't fit. So, first criteria is tolerance. What that means is that when somebody uses something, they use it for a while, and eventually they need more and more and more of it in order to get the same rush, the same feeling. And so, I work with sex addicts who start off looking at porn, but then next thing you know, they're picking up prostitutes on the street. And they say to me, how did I get there? Like, why do I do that? Well, the reason is because the looking at porn didn't do it anymore. Their tolerance had built up, and they need to go get another rush. They need to get something more to feed that addiction. And that's not the case for everybody. There's plenty of people that can drink a glass of wine with dinner and they don't become alcoholics. And so people can be sexual, they can look at porn and they don't become addicts. However, it does happen where tolerance does build up, and they need to push limits in order to get the same rush, the same hit, so to speak. So yes, tolerance does exist with sex. Okay, the next one is withdrawals. I can't quote any research on this, but I do see withdrawal symptoms happen when somebody starts to not act out sexually anymore. Then I've heard of insomnia, headaches, irritability. I've even heard of a rash happening on, and maybe did that happen because of withdrawals from a sex addiction? Maybe, maybe not. However, insomnia, headaches, irritability, those are all real things that I see when somebody stops acting out sexually. And so those are withdrawal symptoms that I see from sex. The next one is a pattern of compulsive substance use or sexual acting out that is characteristic of dependence. The individual may take sex in larger amounts or over a longer period of time than what was originally intended. So what happens is, it's again, the tolerance is somebody is acting out sexually a lot more than they ever thought that they would. Okay. The individual may spend a great deal of time obtaining it and using it. And so, the sex addicts I work with, they can spend hours upon hours acting out or figuring out how to act out. And they're wasting time. They're spending this time not even aware that they're really spending it, yet it's consuming more and more of their life. Okay. Next criteria is, despite recognizing the contributing role of the use of it to a psychological or physical problem, they continue to do it. And does this exist with sex? No question. Guys will, they'll be on the brink of losing their marriage, yet they'll go sleep with a prostitute. They will be warned by their boss multiple times that if they look at porn again at work, that they'll get fired, and they look at porn again at work and they get fired. Their behaviors are out of control and unmanageable, and they have compulsive behaviors around sex. So to me, if you define addiction the way I do, there's no question sex is an addiction. And if you dumb it down, and to me, an addiction is doing something that you don't want to do, but you crave it and you do it anyways. And us being sexual beings, we can control ourselves sexually. It's good to be a sexual person. It's okay to explore things and have desires and all of those things. However, if you go do destructive behaviors that do self-harm to yourself, but you can't stop yourself from doing it, it's an addiction. So I want to know your thoughts on this. Like I said, I'd love to hear every angle of this, and I'm open to it. And I'm going to share some articles and blog posts that I know of that can help define this even better. But I'd love to have the debate here on our page and look at it. So share this with people, and hopefully we can learn from each other.